Okay, so just briefly then, Freedom from Torture, which was originally called the Medical Foundation, provides support to survivors of torture in a variety of ways, operating mainly from its 5 centres in the UK, in London, Birmingham, Newcastle, Manchester and Glasgow. So the sorts of things that we do, we have experts who provide very detailed medico-legal reports to support people's asylum applications. Therapy is provided for some people one-to-one and or through less formal means, such as creative writing, gardening, bread making groups. Advocacy and self-advocacy, hugely important, supported through the Survivors Speak Out group. Practical help is given to survivors to get by day to day, particularly important at the moment with the pandemic and just how very difficult it is for people to manage. Freedom from Torture also produces country reports based on the testimony of survivors, and those can be used for campaigns sort of nationally and internationally, because we're talking about people whose claims have been accepted by the Home Office, so is irrefutable evidence that torture has been happening in the way that they are claiming in these countries. And it's part of the focus of that is to try and reduce the need for migration for refugees having to seek asylum. And currently Freedom from Torture are actively campaigning to prevent asylum seekers being accommodated in barracks, and that's kind of very important campaign and making some waves there. And they're also working with the Home Office to improve the interview process for asylum seekers, which can be experienced as very inhumane and re-traumatizing for applicants. So as a local group, our main remits are awareness raising and fundraising, but we're really fortunate. We have Alison Orton, who's on the committee, who works for Freedom from Torture, preparing the medico-legal reports. We also have Judy, who is Director of Trauma Foundation Southwest, which is a charity providing therapy locally to refugees and asylum seekers. And Faik, who you're going to hear from soon, has recently joined the committee. So tonight's event is free, but both Freedom from Torture and STAR are charities and totally rely on donations from supporters. So we're really hoping that from tonight's event you might feel inspired to make some donations to our work. So you saw the QR code at the beginning. If you point your phones at them, or you point at them, the barcode scanner on them, that takes you straight to the website for donating. And I think we've got the links on the chat as well. We'll put those back up at the end of the event. So I think I am going to hand over to Erin at this point.
Thank you, Linda. It's really lovely to be co-chairing tonight as well, and it's really nice to do these sorts of collaboration. So good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for coming. It's amazing to see not only how many people have come, but also from around the world. That's just blown my mind a little bit. So yeah, it's great to see you all here tonight. I'm Erin. I'm the campaigns coordinator at Bristol STAR. So STAR is Student Action for Refugees, which is a national charity. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the local work that Bristol STAR does. So we're one of the 50 student groups that make up STAR National. In Bristol, we run a range of volunteering projects. So we do conversation classes, we do a mentoring scheme, and we also run a homework club. Alongside that, we also support a lot of campaigns. So at the moment, we're supporting Families Together, which is a campaign that seeks to reunite refugee and asylum seeking families here in the UK. So as well as the reintroduction of legal aid. So hopefully tonight you'll see that that's sort of a really relevant campaign to this conversation. That's kind of it from Bristol STAR. So again, thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to quickly pass over to Freya, who's going to talk about where your donations will be going.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Yeah, so I'm also from Bristol STAR. I'm just going to quickly tell you about where your money will go if you donate to STAR, but obviously definitely donate to Freedom from Torture as well. They're both doing great things. So the money for Bristol Star will be going to our Sanctuary Scholar Legalship Fund. So a Sanctuary Scholar is a student from a refugee or asylum seeking background who has received a scholarship to study at university. Unfortunately, even though this is an incredible scholarship and incredible opportunity, these students are still vulnerable to study bans and other legal fees from the Home Office. And due to the scholarship, it actually makes them non-eligible for legal aid, which means that these fees they're forced to pay them out of their own pocket, which I don't know if you've ever met a student, but we don't generally have the money for solicitor fees. So we decided to set up this legal fund to provide kind of a substitute for legal aid for our fellow students. Luckily, so far, we've managed to help one student by giving them £3,000 to pay for a legal fee. Sadly, this morning, we actually found out that another of our students has been faced with a study ban and have about £3,200 of legal fees just dropped on them. Luckily, we have £1,000 so far to help, but we desperately need more donations really urgently. The solicitor invoices come in, and we are expecting to pay £3,200 sort of in the next week or so. So I've put the link in the chat. If anyone has any money, please donate. It will super help the scholar out. But yeah, that's everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Freya. I think it makes it a bit more real to hear those kind of stories. So thank you so much for that. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce our first speaker, which is Fike. He's a semi-retired consultant community paediatrician who currently has the responsibility of assessing unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people. But it's much more interesting to hear about his work from him. So Fike, over to you.
Hello, and thank you all for coming. My name is Fike Tukmarchi. I'm a semi-retired consultant paediatrician and currently carry out assessment for the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people. I'm also involved with looked after children. I've always been involved with children who are vulnerable and in need of protection. So really, talking about the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, really they are, as a group, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are united by their separation, not only from their family of origin, but from their community and country of origin, and are seeking refuge from political, cultural, religious, or other form of persecution, including armed conflict and war. This had been made worse, obviously, by COVID. So who are the unaccompanied young people? And what is the definition? A young person seeking asylum within the presence of a legal guardian, i.e. parent or someone with parental responsibility according to the Children Act. Now, relatives and other accompanying adults don't have the parental responsibility. Sorry, this is without the presence of a legal guardian. Okay, now the Home Office accepts the Children Act 1989 definition, which is anyone under the age of 18. Article 3 of United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child provides that in all actions taken concerning children, the best interest of the child shall be a primary consideration. Now, this is equally the same for the Children Act 1989. Unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people have the same rights by statute as children who are looked after, as they are accommodated under Section 20 of the Children Act. This group of young people are the most vulnerable group in our society. Children are looked after in the United Kingdom if they have been abused, neglected, if parents could not look after them safely. The local authority then will have the legal responsibility. So it's important to define the age, okay? Under the Children Act, anyone who is under the age of 18. Now, considering over 50% of births in the developing world are not registered. So in a way, these young people actually don't know how old they are. Now, if disputed, serious implications for the outcome of their asylum claim and for their ability to access health, education, and welfare. The assessment is carried out by 2 social workers and an accompanying adult. Now, underestimating the age will make other children vulnerable. Overestimating the age make the young person vulnerable. So it's so important to have the age right. So where do they come from? This will vary according to the political, religious, and cultural situations. They mainly include Afghanistan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Iran, Kuwait, Sudan, Syria, and Vietnam. So what's their experiences? War and terrorism, civil unrest, ethnic persecution, political persecution, religious persecution, the journey to the UK, the asylum-seeking process, and media reporting. The local authorities have responsibilities, and these are corporate guardianship, named social worker, accommodation. Now, those who are under the age of 16, they are placed with foster parents. Those are over 16 are in semi-independent living. Immigration legal advisor, supporting asylum application, personal educational plan, right of care leavers if they were still in care by the age of 17 and a half. And last but not all, the statutory initial health assessment. And that's how I get involved. Now, what are the aims of the initial health assessment? Is to identify any immediate health needs, to facilitate effective multi-agency planning for the young person, to promote the health and well-being, to fulfill the statutory requirement for health assessment and looked after children, to inform agencies who have corporate parenting responsibility of the health needs of the young person, to facilitate effective multi-agency planning for looked after children, to provide aggregated data to inform community health needs assessment for looked after children. Now, the report is generally completed 4 weeks from the referral which is made. Now, initial health assessment will include the following: confidentiality and consent, professional interpreter present, and certainly not a family friend. Current health, including dental, vision, hearing, medication, and allergies, physical examination, body maps for scars if tortured, height and weight, immunization status, diet, past medical history, including blood transfusions, tattoos, and operations, education in their own country, family history, and if parents are related, mental and emotional health, lifestyle and safety issues, interest, alcohol and smoking, substance misuse, sexual health, and keeping safe. Female genital mutilation, where relevant, social history, including travel to the UK, but this is really very brief, as it's generally uncomfortable for these young people. Blood test, advice, and signposting to other services. Now, with consent, young people over the age of 16 have the capacity to consent. Under 16 can consent if GILIC competent, and that means to say, understand risk and benefit, retain the information, use the information, and communicate their decision. Otherwise, the local authority will give consent. The consultation is confidential, and the young people are told that, and it's only shared with health and children's services. And we generally use a universal pro forma. So anybody who sees any unaccompanied asylum-seeking child or young person have the same format. Professional interpreter is essential. And sometimes if it's not available, consultation has to be cancelled and wait until a professional interpreter is present. Certainly, friends or relatives are not suitable. So what are the health needs of these young people? The top of the list is the mental health issues. They are at the young people are at increased risk. This might present as physical symptoms rather than talk about their difficulties. Children's Society found mental health support available for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people not meeting their needs. And these are the reasons. Traumatic events in their country of origin will continue in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder, flashbacks, sleep disturbance, memory impairment, anger, disruptive behavior, self-harm, and even suicide. Mental health could deteriorate after arrival if they face barriers. Self-harm and suicide pose grave concerns if not receiving holistic treatment. The use of strengths and difficulties questionnaires during assessment to identify mental health issues, lack of awareness of professionals of mental health needs of these young people, language used to communicate is often inadequate, especially the understanding of mental health, stress due to immigration and asylum service, and government policies of creating hostile environment. The second important concerns is the post-traumatic stress disorder. It develops following stressful event or situation which is exceptionally threatening or catastrophic in nature. Some might not be present till several months or years after the event. These young people have a higher level compared to their counterparts. Now, young people are screened as part of the initial health assessment. However, it can underestimate the problems, especially if it's done early. Most vulnerable are those who live in semi-independent living, combination of pre-immigration events, immigration status, and social care living arrangements. The journey: chased by pack of dogs, assaulted, fired at, witnessing fellow travelers maimed or killed, separated from the family, very little nutrition, and being nocturnal as they have to travel all night. Early intervention programs will include support and respect of sleep and sleep hygiene, identification of malnutrition and refeeding symptoms, encourage exercise and sport, preventive strategy using hope in response to loss of purpose once arrived in this country. The post-traumatic stress disorder screening is done as a routine at initial health assessment, but this should be repeated after 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, and 2 years. Now, sleep is a common problem among these young people. They have poor sleep pattern as they had to travel all night and they got used to being awake at night. They have flashbacks, they have nightmares. We mustn't underestimate safeguarding issues. We have to assess their vulnerability to sexual exploitation, explore sensitively exposure to violence, rape, and trauma, inquire about female genital mutilation, which is illegal in this country, and keep in mind modern slavery. We look into their immunization status. Nearly all not sure about their immunization status. We presume they are not immunized and implement the immunization program. Blood-borne virus infections. Majority of countries of origin have high risk and made worse by the journey. Prevalence vary according to each country, which we refer to our database. They include hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, and syphilis. Hepatitis B can cause chronic liver disease. There is increased risk of liver cancer if infected at birth. Transmission is sexual, blood to blood, and mother to child. HIV transmission is sexual, blood to blood, and mother to child. Syphilis can be congenital. Hepatitis C, symptoms might vary, with some don't show any symptoms. Transmission is from blood to blood. Next one is anemia, thalassemia, and sickle cell disease. Obviously, this depends upon the country of origin. Mustn't forget that 30% of the world population are anemic. TB, we have to inquire about if they have any active symptoms, and we have to check for BCG. We arrange for BCG if necessary, obviously according to the country of origin. Other communicable diseases and intestinal infections, including malaria and typhoid, skin infections, sexual and reproductive health. Some have experienced rape, torture, or might have worked as commercial sex workers before, en route, or after arrival to the United Kingdom. Full and sensitive sexual health review, and inquire if they are sexually active. Trauma around rape and torture is extremely traumatic for the individual. Appropriate advice is given. Vitamin A and D deficiency, depending on the country of origin, oral health, and looking at dental hygiene, and feeding syndrome. Now, the plan of action is that we arrange for assessment of vision, dental check, hearing assessment if needed, pediatric referrals if necessary, body map completed if necessary, TB screening according to country of origin, blood tests with information leaflet regarding bloodborne diseases. Referrals, these are, if acceptable by the young people. Some will not accept it. As the psychologist to child and mental health, child and adolescent mental health, freedom from torture, Red Cross to find their family, Refugee Council, Mother Tongue, MIND, and other agencies.
Our next speaker we're going to be hearing from is Mia. So she is the community organiser at Safe Passage International, an organisation that supports refugees to access safe and legal routes to asylum across Europe. So without further ado, Mia, over to you.
Thanks very much, Erin, and thanks, Spike, for that really interesting talk. I'm just going to try and hopefully everyone can see that. Someone could give me a thumbs up. That would be brilliant. Thanks, Linda. So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of this event. It's really great to see so many people from all around the world here. Just to kind of introduce a little bit of background to myself, I started getting involved in the issue of unaccompanied children and refugees and asylum seekers at uni. I was also a campaigns coordinator at STAR, Erin, so it's really great to be back at kind of a STAR event now. I started then with this work kind of as a voluntary community organizer in Dorset, where we were campaigning our local council to welcome Syrian families under the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme. It took us about a year and a half of campaigning before the council kind of agreed to welcome families. And now I think there's around 16 to 20 families in Dorset. And on the left is kind of an event that we held back in 2018, where we brought all of the families together and we had a kind of a celebration of the fact that kind of we'd kind of achieved this goal, but also kind of a celebration of this new community that we've created. Now I work at Safe Passage as a community organizer, and in that work I get to work with grassroots groups and individuals and faith groups advocating on safe and legal routes, and in particular for unaccompanied children. And Gulwali's already seen this slide, but this was just kind of a memory of Gulwali and I hiding under a table at an event back in Dorset back in 2016 when we were calling on the council to welcome children. So a little bit of introduction to Safe Passage. Our vision is for every person seeking asylum to be able to access a safe and legal passage to a place where they can lead a full and dignified life. We have 3 teams who are based in the UK, France and Greece. And the way in which we work is through legal casework that often involves strategic litigation, political advocacy and grassroots campaigns. Kind of moving on to the journeys and kind of the safe routes that have been available to unaccompanied children. Many of you will have heard of the DUB scheme. It was a kind of only safe route available for unaccompanied children in Europe. And the original aim was for the scheme to welcome 3,000 unaccompanied children in Europe. There was a lot of back and forth between the government and local authorities and legal challenges. Eventually, it was decided that the scheme would welcome 480 children in Europe, and that closed last May. So at the moment, there is kind of no safe route for unaccompanied children in Europe to be able to get to the UK. The other safe and legal route that exists is the family reunion route, which Erin touched on. And the family reunion route is a route that allows unaccompanied children who are in Europe to be able to join their family members in the UK, or for kind of families, so mothers and children, to be able to reunite with their spouses in the UK as well. That was governed and kind of still is governed by an EU law, which is known as the Dublin III regulation. And so that's still in operation in the EU. But as now we've left the EU because of Brexit, we are now, this kind of route is now governed by the UK immigration rules. So we've fallen out of the Dublin III regulation. That is particularly problematic. We did analysis of our own casework, and we found that 95% of our cases are now not going to be able to apply under the UK immigration rules. And so a lot of cases and a lot of children are now going to be left in very dangerous and vulnerable situations in Europe and with their families. But this is kind of just a success and reflection slide on kind of our work helping over 1,800 refugees to reach safety kind of through the routes that we've helped to open. As part of our grassroots campaigns work, we ran a campaign back in 2018 that was on the 80th anniversary of the Kinder Transport, which welcomed 10,000 Jewish refugees to the UK. And we were asking councils around the UK to pledge spaces for unaccompanied and vulnerable children in Europe. That amounted to 1,400 places being pledged by local authorities up and down the UK. And I put this picture in because that is the pledge that was made by Bristol City Council for 60 places for unaccompanied vulnerable children over the next 10 years. What we're focusing on at the moment in terms of our campaigns and advocacy is the government announced at the end of last year a review and public consultation into safe and legal routes in general that we are expecting to guide what their focus is going to be on the Fair Borders Bill, which is due to come later in the year. Our advocacy efforts are going to be focused on ensuring that unaccompanied children and young people's voices are included in this review, ensuring that their voices are at the centre of it. but also ensuring that there are safe and legal routes for unaccompanied children. As I just mentioned, the DUB scheme closed last year, so at the moment there is no safe and legal route for an unaccompanied child in Europe. And at the moment, a family reunion route is extremely restrictive. So that's what we're going to be pushing for in this review. And these are amazing Safe Passage young leaders. So these are a group of young people from asylum-seeking backgrounds, and they work with one of my colleagues as part of a Young Leaders program where they learn advocacy skills, video editing, how to engage with local media. And here they are outside the House of Lords last year advocating on the family reunion campaign. So I'd really advise you to check their work out on our website. They're just a fantastic group. And as part of this review, they're going to be working on a youth-led report onto what they want safe and legal routes to look like in the UK. And yeah, this is just how to get in touch with us at Safe Passage. But yeah, hopefully put some questions in the chat. I feel like I whizzed through that a little bit, but yeah, thank you very much, and hopefully I'll speak to some of you later.
Thank you so much, Mia. That was really great to hear about your work and sort of from a advocacy sort of perspective. So thank you, and thank you for being here. Our final speaker for tonight is Gulwali Pasale. After seeking asylum in Britain when he was just a boy, Gulwali has become an advocate for refugee rights as well as the writer of the book The Lightless Sky. So Gulwali, over to you.
Thank you, Aaron. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be following Faik and Maya, the great work they do. And thanks for participating and giving up your time this Thursday evening. So I'll keep it brief and short. This is my book, The Lightless Sky. If you have read it, thank you very much. If you haven't, please do read it. So I came to the UK as an unaccompanied minor about 14 years ago, almost 14 years ago now. I left Afghanistan because of the war and conflict back in 2006 alongside my brother. Then we were separated by the smugglers and I had to travel on my own across half of the world. I went through 8-9 countries, but I was really supported by other refugees and people that I became friends with along the way. My travel companions, the smugglers and the traffickers were not all very nice people, but there were some good people and the way. So I faced imprisonment and torture, all sorts of unfortunate incidents and situations on the journey, deportation in a few cases where I was arrested, imprisoned in Bulgaria, deported to Turkey, imprisoned in Turkey for a few weeks, and sent to Iran, where I had to start all over again. So I started the journey at the age of 12. I made it to the UK at the age of 13. So it took me about a year. I spent a terrible month in Calais, the miserable place, the jungle. And again, I mean, it's unfortunate because at the time in 2007, the Dublin regulation existed because I was coming to the UK precisely that I heard my brother was here. There shouldn't have been legal and safer routes for me to come, but nobody really told me about it, and I wasn't aware of it at that stage. I think the UK is very good in has been using Dublin 3 or Dublin regulation to send people back to EU countries where they have fingerprinted or they have families, but they're very slow, and actually they were very slow in bringing people here who had legal rights to be here. Anyhow, I made the journey, managed to get here after a hellish experience. I mean, a lot of people ask me, why did I have to come through all these countries? Well, because I was unwelcomed in most of these countries except Italy, which was a very positive experience for me. And if it wasn't for my brother supposedly being in the UK, I would not have come. I would have stayed in Italy. But in most cases, I was in prison, arrested, treated quite badly. And getting into the UK was not the end. And as Faik mentioned about the asylum process, it's a very dehumanizing process. It makes you makes you depressed. It makes you stress out. I didn't lose hope on the journey, but sadly I lost hope when I was in the UK. Although I was safe and secure, I was taken care of by social services in the local authority in Kent. I was provided with food and clothes and so on, but mentally I was disturbed. There was a system of disbelief. My age was disputed. So the first thing social service wanted to do was to make me over 18. No, actually over 16, 16 and a half, they said I couldn't have been 13 because I've traveled half of the world. I admit I looked old. I still look old because of the environment that I had to grow up in eastern Afghanistan, a very mountainous, harsh environment. But also the journey made me age. I had to grow faster to survive and have to act more mature than I was, because, I was on this journey, which there was no going back really, because, I left home. My family sent me away from my and my brother's safety. Anyhow, it took about 2 years. I was able to challenge social services over my age dispute. It took some time. I was able to challenge the Home Office, who did not believe I was an Afghan national. So the whole system was basically making me a criminal. It took about 5 years for the Home Office to grant me refugee status. I lived in constant limbo, but thankfully I was fostered by a wonderful foster parents in Bolton. Along the way, I found my brother, which was really wonderful after being in the UK for a few months. The journey didn't took me, I was able to go to school, get my education done, although English being my fourth or fifth language. Did quite well with my GCSEs, and then went on to do my A-levels and the university. Graduated with a politics degree from the University of Manchester. But I have always been advocating and campaigning for refugees' rights whenever I had the chance and opportunity to share my story, even though I don't particularly enjoy sharing my story, but I feel it's important that we humanize the debate. And it's great to see there's so many wonderful and kind-hearted and generous people across the UK and the world who makes a stand, who stands up and shows solidarity with the refugees and migrants, and particularly unaccompanied minors. I do sometimes feel kind of sad, because it's good. There's a lot of solidarity and empathy and sympathy towards children, which is great. But there is, if you're over 18, you still need help. You still need support. Doesn't mean automatically you become a superhuman being. There are people I know who are 25, 24, and are struggling. So I feel like, of course, this focus on unaccompanied minors is important, but ultimately we should be doing a lot more for people who are young people. And age is important in the legal terms, but I guess they also need support and help. I recently finished my master's. I've done a lot of cool things, but I haven't been able to go back to Afghanistan. I've not seen my mom and my family for the last 14 years or so. And The Lightless Sky, I never thought I'll write a book and it'll be published in like 7 countries in 6 languages. It has given me the opportunity to actually go and speak to people, raise awareness, inform people about the refugee crisis, the refugee struggles, and our stories and experiences. Because a lot of the time, you see there's some, people with a lot of good intention, a lot of good charities doing some great work, speaking about us rather than speaking to us. So it's important to have somebody with lived experience. And I think, Safe Passage, STAR, Freedom from Torture, and other refugee charities does some great work. And I feel like now they are involving a lot of more people with lived experiences. That's really important. And I feel like, we need to be involved in the kind of decision-making process and so on. I could go on and on, but I just wanted to give a short introduction. There are, 80 million or so displaced people in the world. Almost half of them are children. And there are about 30 million refugees in the world. And half of them, about 15 million or so, are children. And most of these children are out of school. They're living in terrible conditions in refugee camps. And the situation in Europe actually has been quite deteriorating for people. Whenever I have been able to go back to Calais, go back to Greece, when I've been able to travel in the last few years, and I've seen young people, youngest as me, I saw a boy in Calais in 2016, 17. He was 10, and he's on. And now there are people stranded there in the cold condition, people sleeping in the streets of Paris, people being sent back through illegal pushbacks by the Greek authorities over to Turkey, and people being left purposely in the middle of the Mediterranean, the Aegean Sea. We see so many reports from Croatia where there's been pushbacks and people being tortured and treated, humiliated without any dignity and respect for their human rights. So there's a lot of injustice happening in, particularly the situation in Bosnia and as well as, the Greek Coast Guard saved my life 13 years ago or so, but the same Coast Guard has sadly purposely drowning people for political reasons or so. And there has been about, over 25,000 people have lost their lives in the last 5 years in the Mediterranean alone. And there's been over 6,000 deaths. The picture is quite bleak, but I want us to be positive and hopeful. And I feel like the UK could certainly play its fair share when it comes to unaccompanied minors. And I think the DAP scheme was very good. We were supposed to take 3,000 people, as Maya mentioned. We didn't even take, we'll take only 400 or so. We didn't even take 500 people, children. And I feel like, there were 100,000 children who entered Europe in the last, 5 years or so. And we should be playing our fair share. I feel like we can certainly take about 10,000 children from Europe, particularly those who have links to the UK through family, through cultural, linguistic, or other reason, or who are stranded and wants to come to the UK. There are a small number of people children in Calais and Dunkirk who wants to come here. And I feel like without providing safer and legal routes, we can't just continue building more walls and fences and preventing these people to access asylum and protection, which is their human rights. I mean, we have been building walls and fences before Trump thought of one. And actually right now, as we speak in Calais, refugees are being harassed by the French police. Their blankets been taken away, their shoes been taken away, they've been tear gassed without taxpayer money. So the British government, through our taxes, funds the French police to harass refugees who wants to come to the UK. And this idea that we expect France and Italy and other countries to take on refugees, they do. To be fair, they do take on refugees. Yes, I don't agree with the way they've been treated, but they do a lot more than the UK. And we have this mentality that we want other people to take the burden and responsibility, and we just don't want to share in this humanitarian crisis. So I feel like we need to put pressures on the government, and particularly on MPs, especially for the Fair Borders Bill. And there's been so many opportunities to insert low dubs have tried it so hard to get the government to have something in law to say that we will accept unaccompanied minors from Europe as well as elsewhere. The family reunification is such a complex and complicated process. For example, if I want to bring my mom here, I should have been able, but as an unaccompanied minor, that was quite impossible. And I wasn't really aware of the whole complexity in the law. And now there isn't the legal possibilities isn't really available through legal aid and so on. So I think, family reunification, helping and supporting young people, as Faik was mentioning, with their trauma, their mental health situations. And I think students can play a really positive role, young people particularly, in helping us to, with mentoring, befriending, helping young refugees to access education. I mean, the thing that really helped me was being able to study and to go on to do the things that I've done with the support and help of charities and individuals, people who believed in me. And I just encourage you to not lose hope. Please, please continue supporting and showing solidarity with unaccompanied minors, with all refugees. But unaccompanied minors are people who are the most vulnerable, very easy to be exploited because they're children and they're stranded. They're going through an experience without their own fault. I mean, they have been, fled wars and conflicts and persecutions and a lot of violence and injustices. And the least we should be doing is welcoming these people. They are there. We can invest in their future. They will contribute once they're able to. And I guess it's not just helping and supporting them because they will contribute, but because it's the right thing to do. I feel like, we have a moral and legal obligation to help children, particularly the children who are stranded in Europe, but also help refugees and people who have got here safely to allow them to bring their families there. The rules around family reunifications are really, really restrictive. That needs to be a bit more, there needs to be a little more flexibility by the government. If people should be able to bring their old parents, or parents should be able to bring their children, especially if you have a son or daughter who is just over 18, you can't bring it. That doesn't make sense, because you can bring the rest of your family, for example, but then you can't bring one or two people who are just the age of over 18. And as I said, at 18, you don't just automatically become a responsible person. You still need help and support. Anyway, I thank you for listening and looking forward to the question later on.